Thanks for the introduction, Timothy. I am Axel Sirota, and in this short session, we will try to analyze a tool in the ecosystem of Apache Pulsar that maybe is not well known, but is extremely useful. So let's get going. First, a brief summary of who am I, but I promise this will be short. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I give courses for people that need to get a certification in Azure. I'm also an author, instructor, and editor at Pluralsight, O'Reilly Media, and Develop Intelligence. Here's a QR of some of my courses in case you have a subscription. And I'm also an AI and cloud consultant, offering AI advice or Apache Pulsar advice to many different enterprise clients. So let's do a brief summary of what we are going to see. First, we're going to get a simple scenario that it happened to me working with a company, but probably it will, if not, it will happen to you or it has happened to you. Then we will check Pulsar SQL, which will be the star of this session. Pulsar SQL will allow us to inspect and debug topics in a way that will make our lives way easier. And finally, we will get introduced into how to do interactive analytics with Pulsar SQL and how that can get inside our platform and how we can hook it. So let's get going. I promise this will be short but fun. First, a simple scenario. So let's imagine you have an application. It's in some instance, somewhere. It can be in Kubernetes, it can be in Azure AKS, it can be in AWS Kubernetes system, it can be anywhere. That application is writing some file. For now, let's assume it's a log. And let's assume that inside this log, you have some information that you want to insert into Pulsar to do some processing. So what you would have usually is some file source that reads this file, processes it, and sends it into a topic within the Pulsar deployment that may be somewhere else in the world. It can be in another region. So let's suppose that we have defined this ingress topic, such that gets all these logs. And now we have some Pulsar function within our Pulsar deployment that does some processing to get all that processed information into a process topic. From there, we can do some hooking into another external system that reads from this topic in a low fashion or in a batch fashion, just to do some analysis maybe, or maybe some alerting. So let's imagine this architecture. Now, but you deploy all this, it's in production maybe for a week, and some issues start to appear. You check the status of the Pulsar function as we can with the Pulsar admin CLI, and there are some exceptions. But you haven't set a log topic for each Pulsar function. It may be that we don't have only one, we have many chained Pulsar functions. We have maybe a function mesh, and on the output, we don't see a one-to-one bijection to all of the ingress topic events, and the reason is that there are some exceptions, and we don't have a log topic for each of all of the functions. Maybe we forgot, as it happened to us, or maybe it's just not feasible due to the amount of log topics that we would need. Now, we could tear down that Pulsar function, run it in debug mode locally, hook it on both sides, and just debug it locally. But that would require downtime. So let's suppose that we don't want some downtime. We want to check what happened in the past right now. The question I ask you is, what can you do? And this is not an easy question. You don't have the ability to go back in time and maybe rerun that Pulsar function. We would need to deploy another Pulsar function. There are a lot of schemes, but let me introduce you a tool that helps you in this scenario easily. Let's analyze Pulsar SQL. So what is Pulsar SQL? Pulsar SQL, in the end, it's a Presto, or now it's named Trino, deployment with the Presto connector that is enhanced in a way that it can query bookkeeper bookies directly. From there, it can fetch the information of the bookies and you can analyze it in the Presto SQL shell. That is amazing. At least for me, it was an eye-opener. So, what we can do is check every message that passed through any topic easily and in a safe manner, because it is lightweight as it queries the bookies directly and it can query a replicated segment instead of where maybe some reader is reading. You don't have any impact in performance. It can allow high concurrent access due to the scalability of Bookkeeper, and you can even reuse an existing Presto cluster. So you can analyze with SQL Pulsar topics. But SQL, we know how to run it, we know how to leverage tools. So that enables a whole new world of possibilities. Just to put it pictorially, if we have our Pulsar deployment and we have our bookkeeper and we have 3 bookies, which is the default in Pulsar, we can have the broker with some subscription that it's reading from in this case, the violet segment, but we can read from the replicated segment with Presto connector through Pulsar SQL, so it doesn't impact performance. And of course we can horizontally scale the amount of bookies and the amount of brokers. So we don't care. We don't care because it's going to work either way. And this is the best part. How to deploy it is extremely simple. It's just a single configuration file. You specify where is the URL of the broker and the zookeeper, which it can be a proxy, like in this case where it is leveraged by HTTPS, mypulsardeployment.com, it can be anything. You specify the port of the zookeeper, you put it in the Pulsar properties in a certain location, and then you just start with the Pulsar admin CLI, the SQL worker that will leverage a process, use the Presto cluster, or start a new one if you don't have any, and start querying Pulsar. From there, you just need to run the Pulsar SQL command and it will start the console, which is the Presto console. And from there you can run queries. That easy. You can even use it programmatically if you want. This is so simple, and for me it's so powerful, because I am able to leverage all the SQL tools I already have for other systems in Pulsar. Let's see for a brief moment how the full architecture looks like. So we have some readers, which are reading from a topic, which is an event stream. This event stream, as we know, is split into segments that are replicated across the bookies. What we have is the Presto workers, which are on the downside of this diagram, which are reading directly to the bookies. And if we have a reader reading, for example, to segment 4 in one bookie, we can coordinate with the Presto coordinator such that the worker on the split that needs to read from segment 4 will read on another bookie, on the replicated segment. So they don't collision, we don't have any problem in performance. Now, you may ask yourself, this is all beautiful, but why? Why should we use it? Well, one use case is to validate schemas in a readable SQL format. Let's suppose that we have a topic and we want to use a schema registry. It is not a hidden clue that Avro is not that easy at the start. So when you submit an Avro schema to a topic, it may not be the correct one. It is way easier, rather than trying to submit a given message and playing around, to just do show columns on the topic. That's it. You have all the schema, because as we will see, each of the columns will be the fields, and the type of the fields will be the types of the columns, so we will see it easily as we know how to run this. Another use case is to easily debug bad messages that will make our Pulsar functions fail unexpectedly, because we can go back in time, check the messages on the ingress topic in our case study at the start of the talk, and check that, for example, maybe one message was badly formatted. So we can deploy a new version of our Pulsar function that holds a fix to that corner case. And that's it. We don't need a microservice. We just work with Pulsar functions and the Pulsar ecosystem. For me, this is the true event stream serverless architecture, and this is a tool within the ecosystem that leverages it. Another use case, and this is really true for maybe DB admins or DBAs, is that they have already, many companies already have a lot of tools that use SQL behind the scenes and handle queries and analytic queries. So maybe you may have a tool or a service that you have to input a query, and in a scheduled manner it will run the query, fetch the results, and maybe post it in Grafana or maybe Apache Superset. So you can leverage all of that. And that leads us to the interactive analytics with the Pulsar SQL, because now we can leverage all of the tools that rely on do a query, get the result, post it somewhere else, maybe an alarm, maybe an alert, maybe a dashboard. We can have a dashboard now of our Pulsar deployment and our topics, our health of our system. Let's go deeper into that. As I've told you, there is an equivalence between the Pulsar world and the Presto world. So let me give you a hint around that. In Pulsar we have namespaces. Well, the namespaces will be Presto schemas. A schema has tables, which in Pulsar is topics, because a namespace has topics. A topic has messages, and the message has fields. The fields will be the columns of that table. But what happens if we don't have a schema registry? Then there is a _value column in the tables that will hold the unserialized message. So you can use Pulsar SQL in topics that don't have a schema registry already. Let me show you an example. In this case, I do a show columns on the Pulsar catalog on the public tenant on the default namespace on a topic I named BOO, and you have all these columns for free. You have the _value, which holds for the unserialized message. You have the partition, the event type, you have when it was published, by whom it was published, all of the keys for the topic, the properties of the metadata. You have all the information about this topic and this specific message. So, suppose that we have a topic in public Pulsar Summit namespace, and we have date and metrics, and we have for these three specific values. If we do a select star on this column, on this table for this topic, what we would have is just the _value column with the unserialized messages. But if we submit a schema with the date and a metric field, we would have it as date and the dates, metric and the metric. You can imagine that from there we can do all sorts of queries. For example, if we have a new message that maybe it's anomalous on October that had a value of the metric of 120, you can have this query where you select the amount of events that had a metric over, for example, 10, and this may be a query that is run on a scheduled basis to trigger alarms, and you have the result of how many of those had a metric over 10. You can even have to get the month and do an aggregation of how much was the sum of the metrics on each month, because this is simple SQL and we can do simple SQL. And from there we can hook it with all of the external systems that we can think of. Therefore, and that was an example, but just to give you the big picture, we do a zoom out for a second, if you need to interactively debug topics without having open subscriptions to anywhere, or if you need to audit who sent each message, when, where, and what did it send, or how much it took, or maybe if you want to do analytics on the messages flowing through Pulsar, and if you want to do it without affecting production performance, then you have to use Pulsar SQL. It's the go-to tool for that within the ecosystem. Thank you deeply for all this time you have been with me. I am extremely excited about the Pulsar project and how it grew all of the ecosystem. If you have any question, you can send me maybe a Twitter. My Twitter is axelsirota altogether. You can send me a LinkedIn, you can add me, you can connect with me. I will accept everything and I will answer everything. So thank you for your time, and I hope you're having a great conference.